Today, I'm joined by the host of the Modern Hippie Podcast, psychonaut and psychedelic facilitator, Barrett Perlman. This is her third time on the show now, and it's been amazing to see how much she has stepped into the fullness of her being and the sharing of her gifts. And in this episode, we talk about these death and rebirth cycles of oneself and what it means to step into the fullness of who we are, and to see the evolution of her work from when she was facilitating ceremony and guiding people a year ago through to now, and how that has evolved and how life will guide us on paths to offer this unfolding. And at times, it might not make sense. We might not see why things are happening. And then as we zoom out, we can really see how everything has a place. Now, if you want to find Barrett, I'm going to have the links below if you are interested in her offerings, and also a link to her podcast so you can check her out some more. Before we do get started, if you haven't yet subscribed and you're watching on YouTube, it would be amazing if you did that, as it helps the channel. And secondly, twice a month, I host a free group call on Zoom for people that are drawn to deeper, esoteric conversations, the exploration of reality and consciousness. So if that calls to you, there is also going to be a link to be able to register for that. It's completely free, and we'll just get together, hang out, and discuss these types of topics twice a month. All right, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you for joining in the chant with me and being with that. And we were together on your podcast 2 days ago, and I am delighted to have you here for part two. And for me I was holding back and asking you about things when I was on yours, because I kind of wanted to save it so it was organic and to feel into what you've been up to today on my podcast. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love this little rhythm we seem to have found ourselves in, where it's like we're both like, oh yeah, let's do a podcast swap, and then they're like within days of each other. So it always feels very much like a part one, part two.
Yeah, I actually did the exact same thing with Hamilton last time he was on and I was on his. I think they were a day apart. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So I really shared with you what had been alive for me and what was coming up, and kind of weaving through the philosophical concepts and ideas. But I'd really love to know what you've been up to. And before we hit record, we mentioned about the psychedelic ceremonies and how your work has evolved. And I would really enjoy hearing this because Colette and I, we're hosting our first mystery school in a month's time, which is to also incorporating the psychedelics with the 2-day events. So when you said psychedelic ceremony, it was like, aha, yes. And so, yeah, like what's been going on? First of all, let me backtrack. How are you?
Well, thank you for asking. I am wonderful. I am just wonderful. I've really taken the last couple months to just focus on my own personal nourishment. And that's something we'll get into a little bit after the psychedelic ceremony, just exactly what the journey over the last year has been for me. But I am fucking great. Other than it's not summer here anymore. And it's come to my attention that there are two seasons to me. There's summer and there's not summer. And not summer is my lesser favorite.
Yeah, well, it's a good job you don't live in England, because there is not summer.
Bummer.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's summer if you leave the country on a plane.
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me. We had summer for 3 months here, and I'm already like, God, I need to move closer to the equator. I think I just need nonstop summer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm delighted to hear how your journey has been unfolding. And, after I was on your podcast a couple of days ago, I was talking to Colette after, and I was saying one of the things that I really like about you and recognizing you and seeing you, and I think like attracts like, is that you actually have a commitment to not just being in the exploration, but then being in the living of what you discover in that exploration. And this isn't a knock to anyone who is just in the exploration, but there's a lot of people that are, and they might talk about it, but might not be in the embodied living of it. And I always really appreciate your openness, and there's a very humble or authenticity that goes with sharing just all the aspects of the journey. And I just kind of want to acknowledge that I see that in you as someone who actually walks it and lives it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that reflection. I think it's so important for people to hear all of the different things that can come up in ceremony. And I seem to have a rare ability to articulate more of the ineffable, which is that which you cannot describe. And so often people find themselves in that space and seek to share about their experience, and yet because it happens to us in so many different dimensions at the same time and in so many new ways of sensing reality, it can be very hard for people to describe. And so I love sharing it. You know, when we talk about doing the thing that lights us up the most, if you had told my 13-year-old self that I was going to be taking psychedelics for a living and helping others do the same and facilitating pure magic, God, my 13-year-old self, A, wouldn't have believed you, and B, if she had, would have been so freaking excited about life. And so I think you touch on a great thing too, of actually walking with the lessons in the embodied integration of what comes up in ceremonies. And for me, it's just this nonstop curriculum, especially as a facilitator, as a medicine woman myself, like being able to go in and know every single different thing that can come up in ceremony for people, so that when it happens to someone on my watch, I've just got the laser focused knowledge of exactly where they are, exactly what's going on, exactly how to rescue them from, if they need rescuing, but also exactly how to give that space too when they don't need rescuing and they just need to sit through it themselves. And yeah, those lessons are absolutely irreplaceable in my life. They changed everything for me. And really sitting then with where it all comes back to, which is the ability to open the heart and to keep that open.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm really excited to hear, like, how has your work evolved now and the way in which you deliver ceremony?
Yeah, so I was over the last year, I spent a lot of time, the last year and a half really, diving into business masterminds and how to segregate my programs so I could have more location independence. And ultimately, I found that I was not walking my path in trying to branch off all of this coaching specific stuff. And what always came back to me in ceremony was that I am a healer. And I need to integrate that into every single aspect of my work, whether that's reading people's Akashic records and clearing karmic and lineage things and past life things, or illuminating questions about the past and the future, whether it's doing energy work and channeling through my own Arcturian frequencies, whether that's using different tools to shamanically clear energies and bring new energies in. That is something that I now work with my clients on, creating complete wellness packages for their transformation. And so it's meant to really go in and focus on psychedelics as a tool, which then allows, for example, I had a client come to me recently who has been struggling to sleep. And he struggles to shut his brain off and all those sorts of things. And he's an executive at a big tech firm. And we started talking about, okay, well, do you meditate? No, he doesn't. So, okay, anyone in the spiritual world is like, we need to get you meditating, get you in control of your mind. And that was sort of the path I started to guide him on. And as we dug a little bit deeper, he realized that he actually didn't feel safe to sleep. because of something from his childhood, because his mother was gone all the time and it was actually not safe for him to be asleep, compared with a recent ex-partner who would wake him up in the middle of the night just to fight with him. And so he almost had this like trauma response to laying down in bed at night to go to sleep. And then as that began to reveal in how we would work together, it was very evident that we needed to go in with the psychedelic medicines and clear some of that trauma, to go in and release it and create the new safe space for him to be able to sleep. Then paired with the integration of the meditations and giving him the capacity to calm his mind himself. And so I think there's so many issues that people are going with that without someone overseeing your overall spiritual wellness, it's almost like being a soul doula in a way, is kind of how I look at my work, like really connecting with the soul of the person and ushering in that healing and that change that they need, which I love to use the tool of psychedelics. That's what was the most powerful tool that came into my life. And we use other tools as well, like meditation, breath work, energy healing, massage, those sorts of modalities, sound. But putting together something that then addresses, okay, so we're going to have this healing experience in the medicine, and then they're going to continue to be supported on that journey. And follow it up with another one. Because especially with, let's say I predominantly use psilocybin mushrooms, especially with mushrooms, you can get a lot more out of the overall quest of transformation by continuing to come back with a little bit of repetition. I've seen the biggest transformation in my clients who may have done 2 ceremonies with me a month. Now that's excessive, and that's more probably than most people need and are ready for. But committing to the idea that perhaps there's a 1 a month ceremony for 3 months in a row, 5 months in a row, and the amount of change and transformation that someone can see with that kind of commitment to continuing to show up with the same person who's ushering in what their soul needs at the exact moment has been really transformational for my clients. And so I love how my work has shifted into this beautiful blossoming of using shamanic tools, using the medicine space to facilitate that healing, and holding clients in this both safe and playful container that they can just completely let go in and usher in that new version of themselves.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation with Barrett. I wanted to take a quick 20 seconds to just create a invitation and an offer for anyone who feels called. One of my deepest delights in life is to play this role of helping facilitate deeper levels of self-exploration or introspection within others. And if you feel called to this type of journey and you would like to schedule a call with myself to do this, I'm going to pop a link below. The first session I offer is completely for free, and I offer it for everyone to try and deliver as much value as possible in any area of life right now that you may feel requires some clarification or a deeper level of exploration. So if that calls to you, there'll be a link to schedule a call with myself, and it really would be my honor and delight to share that time with you. All right, that's it from me. We'll get back to the conversation with Barrett. The amount of psychedelics that you'll use, the amount of plants that you'll use, is it enough where it kind of just removes the veil so they're still quite lucid, or is it like deeper, kind of like more akin to, for example, when we do ayahuasca ceremony, we're kind of in, well, at least for me, I'm in full blast off and not really participating in anything else except my own experience in another dimension. So if you're using psilocybin, is it where they're really going into like a heavy kind of trip dose journey, or is it a lighter amount where there's a lot of kind of work back and forth together?
It's definitely unique to each client. Most of my clients tend to come to me who have experience with medicines already, and they're interested in doing larger doses. And so often it's common for my clients to take 4 grams, sometimes even 5 grams in ceremony. But the ones who aren't ready for that certainly take more, like 2.5. And it depends on what we're working with as well. When more emotional healing is needed, it's more appropriate to give lower doses. And when they're seeking more spiritual exploration, soul discoveries, consciousness, questions, it's more appropriate to give those higher doses. And then we can really go in and do some really expansive things in that space.
That's amazing. And how has that developed for you? Because I know you've been facilitating this type of work for a little while now. How has that kind of evolved and developed for you over time, from maybe what you were doing a year ago to now?
Great question. I would say my work evolved from being like the ultimate playlist curator once upon a time, and really just to sitting with clients and allowing for, I mean, we still really allow for the journey to unfold how it's meant to. But now there's a lot more focus on creating ritual with the ceremony, creating a safe space through guided meditation. My work now brings in more icaros and sound. So it's very common that we'll sit with the singing bowls and we'll actually talk while I play. And I'll serve the medicine of each chakra as it's needed, depending on what they're talking about, which is a really beautiful experience when people are clogged and talking about, for instance, not feeling enough. We can really get in there on that solar plexus and play that bowl as I plant the seeds of new ideas and new theories of enoughness for them to release into, and allow that to fully open for them. I've also in the last year done my dietas, and so now I'm serving in through the medicine of the trees and lavender, and gosh, it's wonderful because my own experience and study, and I'm such a deep study in the medicine. I love going in and figuring out how to work better with my spirit animals, with my guides, with my trees, my plants. And so having an even deeper understanding now of exactly how to serve that medicine has really evolved my work. One of the animals I've been working with a lot this past year is the orcas. And orcas are members of the dolphin family, which is one of my spirit animals. And so in the past year, I've been learning to shapeshift into orcas, and they have been teaching me how to make their sounds and how to serve their sound as medicine. And they are one of the most intelligent creatures on this planet. I mean, they're aliens, you know? And so to be able to serve their medicine is one of the most powerful sounds I've been able to serve. And so it really shows in the work now that I'm doing, and how the tools are being utilized just as a result of my own personal evolution. And so true magic is happening, and it's been really beautiful for my clients.
Incredible. Now, for people that are listening that might not be as well initiated in this type of space, when they hear you say you shapeshift into an orca and deliver their medicine, I think there might be a big question mark that just appears. So for people that might have heard something like that for the first time, can you maybe kind of like elaborate on that a little more? To like, what does that mean?
Absolutely. Shapeshifting is a shamanic skill, and it involves the evolving of one's like aura, of one's energy, of one's internal visual space into an animal or into an object or a tree or a plant. And the shamans of the Amazon, they are big believers that whatever you see in the vision space is actual reality. There's to them no difference between waking consciousness, the dream state, the shamanic space, the shamanic visionary space. And that really has always resonated with me. And kind of this reality that we create. It's ours to create. And in that, what gives you a sense of strength in your own power? And I think that's where shape-shifting really becomes a potent tool, is whoever is shape-shifting into whatever animal they believe is going to serve you then the best medicine. Does that give them more potency in their power? And for me, that's orcas, the big, strong, beautiful creatures that I personally can't wait to swim with. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah. So would it be something like there's almost like an energetic embodiment of the energy of the animal? Is it something like that?
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. One of the first animals I shapeshifted into was a dragon. And I was in this visual space and I was in a dragon's lair. And and this wasn't even too long ago, this was like a year ago. This dragon was sort of having a conversation with me, and then it looked at me and it said, "Become me, become a dragon." And I was like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And it was like, then I closed my eyes and really went through what would it feel like to transform into a dragon and to now feel a dragon from the inside out. And when we shapeshift and become an animal from the inside out, all sorts of things come along with that, like experiencing their senses, experiencing the world in a way that now is different. I shapeshifted into an eagle the other day while we were driving through the canyons in Malibu, and I got to just really experience, it was such a beautiful day, like what it was like to just fly at the peaks of the mountaintops with the wind under my feathers, and just to be cruising over the Bronco that we were driving in. And I think that those are sensations that we wouldn't normally think to feel as a human. Like if I said right now, hey, why don't you just start flying? As a human flying, you're going to have a different experience than as an eagle flying. And so shape-shifting and changing your energy to embody every little ounce and detail of their makeup is both fun and educational, and brings a sense of personal power.
Yeah, I love that. You know, one of the things that I always like to do is to kind of press into the phenomenology and have a look at how does one have an experience like that. So again, for anyone listening, I feel like they now have a bit more of a feel of like, oh, okay, so I can actually imagine from the inside out, what would it be like to experience reality as that? I think what's really fascinating about that is it gets us to kind of extend out beyond our habitual thoughts and feelings that we repeat on a daily basis. Now, to imagine myself not as just someone else, but as an entirely different, species. And it's like, what would that feel like? What would it feel like to be like a growling dog, or a roaring lion, or a playful chimp? And to imagine, to go into that and actually really see it and then feel that energy consume us. I can really sense that for anyone who's listening who's never experienced or explored anything like this, it actually gives them something tangible where they can go, oh, I might give this a go.
Mm-hmm. And I highly recommend it. You don't have to be a practicing shaman or medicine person in any way, shape, or form to experience shape-shifting and to play in that space. It brings us back to play. I mean, if you were a 5-year-old child and I suggested, why don't you shape-shift into a dragon right now, you're probably not going to think twice about that. And so getting back to that childlike sense of play, if this is a new concept to you, join us. Won't you join us in the sandbox and play?
Yeah, it really is that. As we get older, we get more and more dialed into that left hemisphere where it's like a narrow view on life and reality, and children are so much more expanded in that way, and their ability to imagine and take on energies, they're much less fixed. So it's a beautiful invitation.
And it brings back that connection to sacred world. And sacred world is the world all around us. That we call it sacred because, for starters, it is sacred. But it has this divine energy that is in constant motion, where the trees are sending messages to each other and sharing nutrients. The birds are carrying messages. They are also offering sound healing to every sentient being on the planet. The ocean is moving with the moon and with the force of gravity, and it is this sacred, divine motion and energy that, by embodying another animal and experiencing it and experiencing life through another sentient being's eyes, you get a deeper sense of connection with this sacred world that we are so blessed to be a part of.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it places us back in the position of we are the Earth's, not we have an Earth. It's not the Earth is ours, it's we are the Earth's.
Yeah. That is where I think Avatar is one of the most important movies ever made. Specifically, I'm obsessed with Avatar: Way of the Water because I'm such an ocean fanatic, and they just really do such a phenomenal job of showcasing how, for anyone who's seen Avatar: Way of the Water or hasn't, when the humans go and they attack on the planet, I forget what it's called, but the whole planet launches an attack back. There's something that the humans struggled to overcome was that when they would get close with the trees, it was like the trees would send these pterodactyl type things to attack. They would launch a full systems response. And they couldn't quite figure out how that was happening, but it was because the planet is a sacred world. It could in and of itself then start launching defenses from all of the animals and all of the beings that were on it. They were in cohesion on attacking back the humans.
Yeah, like it has an immune system.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. So, moving back to ceremony, you said you've been doing a lot more. It sounded like what you said is, to begin with, the ultimate playlist curator. It sounded like you're maybe more on the outside and allowing the plants to do its thing, and now it feels like what I sense is like kind of stepping into the fullness of you more, and almost like maybe a owning of the gifts that are uniquely yours.
Thank you for that reflection. 100%. What I have gone through in the last year, this death and rebirth of late, has been a true stepping into my power. And I don't mean power in any sort of negative way, like now I'm wielding some power, but I mean really owning who I am, what I'm here to do, and how I serve my medicine. And it goes so much farther above and beyond for me than talk therapy in the psychedelic space. It is energetic, and it is a soul connection. And that's why it's so important for me also to work with aligned clients, people that we have a connection there, and then I can really get into their souls and see what needs to come through. And so I am personally so grateful for this journey. Had I, to kind of talk a little bit about what has transpired for me this year in particular, it sort of was off to this great start, and we had the crazy eclipses in April, the great eclipse here in America, which felt like this great launching of everything I had been trying to build, and then it all for me came crashing down in May, right after a retreat for my Buddhist program, Planetary Dharma. And I was like ending the retreat just so crystal clear on, this is my path. This is how it all ties together. And then I was sick for the entire month of May. And I'm so sick. It re-triggered my asthma. I ended up in like nonstop asthma attacks. I ended up having to take 2 different rounds of antibiotics, steroids to get my asthma under control. And during that time, I felt so broken. And for anyone who's not familiar with what antibiotics do to your body, they're like a nuclear bomb that goes off in your gut. They kill everything, good bacteria, bad bacteria. It just levels the field. And our gut biome is significantly linked to our emotional states, especially having a poor gut biome can really be linked to depression and things like that. And so I really fell into a very deep depression after that. I couldn't quite get my footing. And as luck would have it, I was planning to go see Hamilton Souther back down in Peru and go on he had a retreat in the Sacred Valley to sit with San Pedro. And so luckily got kind of whisked off down to Peru. And I had gotten to the place before I went where I was cut off from source. I wasn't experiencing synchronicities. I wasn't getting signs. I felt, in a sense, like abandoned by source, but certainly that's a victim mentality that I don't really want to own. I wasn't connected anymore. And if anyone's into gene keys are this hologenetic profile created by Richard Rudd based on where the cosmos are when you were born. And it's this beautiful mapping of a lot of our life's work, how to open our hearts, what we struggle with, what our activations are that bring out that uniqueness that lights us up, that makes us magnetic. And so one of my core wound is around separation from source. That is my shadow. And so when I get separated, that's like death to me. And so I found myself heading to Peru, just feeling completely separated. And for anyone who's not been to Peru, there's this kind of interesting thing that happens when you commit to going to Peru and commit to going on the pilgrimage. As soon as I got on the plane, synchronicities and signs started coming through. Messages started coming through. Specifically, I watched the movie Moana. And it was my first time watching Moana. And it's a Disney ocean-based movie. And sure enough, I'm watching, and there's this moment, right, where the heroine is ready to give up. And at the last second, her grandmother kind of swoops in and gives her the big talk. And I just had this download and started bawling. I was like, oh my God, that's me right now. Like, I am the heroine of my own journey, and I'm about to give up. And as with Moana, if she just went a little farther, she ends up saving the whole world.
Yeah, Moana, that voice inside is who you are. That's what she says to her. Yeah, when that voice starts to whisper to follow your farthest star, Moana, that voice inside is who you are. I've watched Moana, clearly.
Clearly. I need to watch it a few more times so I can start quoting it as well. And that was the first sign that started downloading for me in Peru. And then I quickly met with a friend at a hotel, and he just started channeling through all these transmissions for me that were like, okay, I don't know what's happening here, but something major is about to transform, and I'm here for it. And through sitting with Hamilton then in San Pedro, I let Hamilton know ahead of time, like, hey, I really need some one-on-one time with you before we start ceremony, because I'm in a place I have not seen you in before, or come to you when I have been here, and I really need some help. I really need help. And he was able to facilitate that for me through San Pedro. And so within just like 2 days, so much of that was healed and purged out. I did a ton of purging on San Pedro, which is not overly common, to vomit purge on San Pedro. But that was my thing. And was so grateful for the talented people who were there, not just Hamilton, who helped me heal things around my maternal lineage and around the divine feminine within. And by the end of that retreat, it was clear that I needed to stay longer. And so I was able to extend my trip then to go to the Amazon, which is my favorite place on earth, and stay at the Blue Morpho Lodge and go through my first dieta, and then sit with ayahuasca on another retreat and learn a ton more of skill sets that's now being integrated into my medicine that I serve, and my abilities as a facilitator and shaman. And it gave me this massive evolution of the self. So it was very much this rebirth process. And the potent message that I walked away with was how little I had been allowing my own self to be nourished. And I thought I was nourishing enough. I thought that surfing a couple times a week was fulfilling my soul, and that taking a bath was what I needed, and that I was taking care of myself. But as I left the retreat and came back home in July, I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do the work on my business that stresses me out. I'm not going to do the social media. I'm not going to do the messaging. I'm not going to write the email letters. Like, I'm just going to nourish the fuck out of myself and see what I create from there. Because one of the things we're always teaching as spiritual guides is that when you are well nourished and well played and well tickled and all the things, like, you operate at this frequency that is so magnetic. Yeah. And I just identified that I wasn't there. And what if I really leaned hard into the things that I teach? And sure enough, as about 2 months went by, everything shifted for me. It was truly incredible. I called a really beautiful man into my life who's got me exploring concepts that I've been dying to explore, like polyamory. And that has been opening up and unlocking things in me that resonate so deeply as my own truth. I feel like I've been preparing for it my whole life. And who knows, it may be a phase, but it's one I'm really excited to explore. And as a result, you know, this healer human who's actually also been down to Blue Morpho came into my life. And like, what were the odds of that? And following then, it sort of felt like I had been in super play mode for 2 months. And then this man entered my life, and it's kind of dangling the carrot back to focusing on spirit and refocusing on the path. And it is in just perfect alignment for me to now go, yes, I am now really in my power, and I am ready to usher in more transformations, to bring more healing to the world. And so being able to zoom out then on what happened and transpired this whole year. And now I'm like, oh gosh, it couldn't have been any other way.
Wow, what a story. You know, what you said there about nourishment. I did a post about this recently. It feels like it kind of resonates. Like, true rest is not in the not doing of something. It's in the return to your essential nature. Mm. And from that place we can be doing things, but it feels restful and nourishing because actually you're being you.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we think we have to do this business model, and I was literally having this conversation yesterday. There are so many people that are very heart-centered, empathic, compassionate types that get presented the online model to deliver their coaching in a way that's really not aligned for most of those types. Like, that model is so often aligned for like people that are much more focused on getting the sale. Mm. And for a lot of the people that are really heart-centered, like, they can try and do it, but I've seen it and experienced it. It kind of feels soul-crushing because it just feels misaligned to the actual expression of who you truly are or how you want to be. Not in every case, but I do see that quite a lot. And then I think we see this magic unfold where it's like, hang on, I'm doing this thing because I've been told that's what I'm meant to do, but let me actually just go into me and operate from that place, and then all of the things just start to happen. And you know, it feels like there's this, we can call it the magic unfolds, but I actually think it's just reality. I think reality unfolds because I believe the target we're meant to aim for is to truly be the most aligned expression of who we are. And when we're that, I think life unfolds in the way that it's meant to for us.
You just fucking nailed it. And I was having this conversation last night where, you know, we were discussing how does even some of the structural things around work that I can't get away from, I'm not going to get away from, how does that feel like play? And the problem with most of coaching programs and what many coaches are seeking is like, give me a blueprint. Give me a blueprint of something that works so I can follow it and shove myself into the model that someone else created. And yes, there are proven blueprints, but any good coach would inspire someone to make it uniquely their own. And not every blueprint works for everyone. And what I'm really realizing is I don't think any of these fucking blueprints work for me. Like, not really a single fucking one of them. And as I'm so blessed to have this man in my life now who is also a spiritual guide and a coach and an extremely wise human who's now reflecting to me regarding my human design and being a manifesting generator and where my planets are, taking all of these things into account that really are reflecting to me that when I do something anyone else's way, it's just mediocre. My results are mediocre. And when I do things that are my way, that are outside of the box, that are fucking epic in the way that makes me feel fucking epic, then it's fucking epic.
Epic. Yeah.
That's my new buzzword. Everything now in my programs, everything now around working with me is just fucking epic.
Yeah. And you know, what you said earlier, you mentioned power, and you kind of said not like a wielding power. And, you know, it's funny because Gaffney talks about this, and I wholeheartedly agree. He says, no, we have to reclaim power. Just because we've experienced it in its shadow, we've seen power be misused. And if you think about it, like, the world actually needs people that are heart-centered, living from a place of love and integrity, to step into their power. We actually need that power and the power of love that's actually required to kind of counter the other kind of power that is out there, which is the misuse and of power. And it's like that power that really is fueled by love. Like, yeah, like, let's own that, because it is powerful. It is powerful. And to kind of evoke David Hawkins, you know, power versus force, that power is, especially when fueled by love, I think it's the most powerful thing there is, and the most needed thing that there is.
It really absolutely is. Ultimately, everything I could boil in my work comes down to a return to love, a return to Eros. To use Mark Gaffney's book title. But it is all about love. And what has happened to people throughout their journeys is usually involves some level of trauma or some painful experience in which they have closed off their hearts in some way. And when we really return to love and return to opening our hearts, it becomes easier to feel enough. It becomes easier to feel connected to sacred world. It becomes easier to not experience things like jealousy, and to love a partner unconditionally and to trust a partner unconditionally. It just all becomes easier to even walk your path, to know your purpose, and to get that laser-like focus that feels effortless on pursuing it.
Yeah. Yes to that. You mentioned Moana, and you may have noticed that I have a thing for Moana. So I spoke about this actually on the very first podcast that I did. There's so much depth to Moana.
Oh my God.
And it is actually, again, to kind of quote Mark, is actually, and he doesn't know this about Moana, and I told Krista, which is one of the people in his organization, it's actually a unique self story, and it's actually the exploration of and discovery of her unique self. That is what the film is, the songs that move through it, the things she has to go through. And one of the most amazing bits that people miss, and you've got to go check this out after, there's the bit towards the end of the film where they're trying to defeat Takar, and there's that moment where she pauses in recognition, where she says, like, she realizes, like, they've taken the heart from Tafiti. And what you just said about the pain where someone required love, that is literally what we see there. We see this lava monster, because the heart, which is it was green, the heart chakra color.
Mm-hmm.
The heart of Tafiti been taken. Now there's the lava monster, and when she then calls it back in and returns the heart, it goes from the lava monster to the goddess. And the bit that's more amazing that almost everyone misses, just watch the scene as Takara becomes Tafiti. You realize it's just a big version of Moana. It's the exact same face.
Oh, beautiful.
It's the exact same face. Yeah. And you see, it's actually, that was like her that was her doing the shadow work almost. It was her actually calling back in the split off parts, returning the heart to it, loving that part, and then it transmutes to, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Moana's like the most incredible movie ever made.
I literally, my eyes have welled up to that movie numerous times.
Yeah.
Because I feel the depth, and it's such a deep human story. I feel like I actually connect to the human experience through watching that. Yeah.
Me as well. And I also noticed that the heart was green for the heart chakra, and the shadow work there, and really they did a phenomenal job of portraying how when we lose that connection to our heart, people become that tyrant.
Yeah.
And which was the lava monster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this was lesson 1 of my first ayahuasca journey almost a decade ago.
Wow.
It was lesson 1, maybe half an hour in, after I'd seen all the cool geometric shapes. I'm like, like really powerful visuals. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. And then I see like some kind of like snakes coming towards me, and then all of a sudden there's these 2 demonic entities, and I thought, oh no. So my eyes were closed, and I thought, right, I want this to stop. Let me open my eyes. And then they were still there, which made it even worse. I was like, okay, let me close my eyes again. And I thought I had to fight these things. And all of a sudden, there was just like, I was in this kind of arena, which was like a battleground, ready to fight these 2 demons. And then before I did, and this must be, I would guess, half an hour into my first experience. And by the way, pre-ayahuasca, I'd had no state-altering substances outside of alcohol.
Wow, good for you.
So I'd not smoked cannabis, like nothing. So ayahuasca was my first thing.
Okay.
And,
I see you.
and so I see these things, and then I'm about to fight them, and I just had a moment of awareness. I was like, oh no, they don't need fighting, they need love. And I realized what I could see was it was 2 beings that were this way because there was a time in their life where they needed love and didn't receive it. And then I just embraced them. I was just like, oh, come, let me love you. And then they just went away. They went, and the rest of the journey for, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours was just like this most incredible, connected, loving, blissful experience, full of lessons. I felt like I could make sense of everything that happened my entire life, just from this place of feeling completely connected to the divine and love. And that was the first. I went from being atheist to understanding what God was in that one night, and never saw the world the same again after.
Wow, what a beautiful journey you went through in that ceremony.
Yeah.
It really brings me back to that love is the most incredible the tool, but I want to say weapon. It is the most incredible weapon against those that are out of love. And when you send, like you did, love at those 2 entities, it just dispersed, because love is the most powerful force on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, I truly believe there is a cosmic love, which is the force that moves all reality, and we're just participating in that. We're participants of that love, and I think if someone is disconnected from that, they're disconnected from reality, and they're disconnected from themselves. And what you mentioned earlier about being cut off, when you cut off from source, I truly believe we actually can't be connected to ourselves if we're not connected to source, because we're not. So if we're cut off from source, we're cut off from self, because the truest expression of ourself is completely connected to source. So it would make, I just feel what you said earlier, it would make sense that you felt how you felt when you were cut off from source and how you were feeling. Like you almost can't locate your truest self when you're separated in that way.
God, absolutely. And that feels like a great way of describing it. And for me, being such a magical being with strong intuition and vision and all the things, it was all gone.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the magic was gone. Other than, I had my trees I still walked around and talked to, and the birds, but otherwise it was gone.
Yeah. But it's back.
It's back. Yeah, it is so back, and certainly something that I'm so passionate about helping other people reconnect with is that sacred world. The idea that, even that we spend all day indoors, if you're working at a desk, or behind a computer, can be really detrimental to our energy and our connection to said source.
Yeah. I had this come for me at the weekend. I had some cannabis and I just sat outside, and what I was feeling into was we are divorced from earth, and we are divorced from the elements, and we are the elements. And if we're divorced from the elements, we're divorced from ourselves. If you think earth, wind, fire, water, like what percentage of us is water? How long, if breath is wind, like how vital is that? Fire being the ball of fire in the sky. Like you said, summer or not summer, and how much summer actually does for us and all of life on the planet. And then earth, it's like if we're where we aren't water and breath, the rest of us is the physical matter, which it's like it's from earth, and we literally are those four elements, and then we become so disconnected from them. So how can we not be disconnected from ourselves? I've actually never had that thought until this weekend just gone, and it's like the spirit of cannabis was almost calling me back to nature, to recognize myself as nature, and as the elements.
I love that about cannabis in particular. I find a lot of the messages that come through from marijuana is one of deep connection with the earth and very embodied. It'll help really get you into your own body. That's when I get my Eastern medicine downloads, when it'll show to me different systems of the energy and how they work, things like pressure points and where they connect to. I'll get those kind of downloads on marijuana, but for other people it may be as simple as stretching. That seems to be one of the common threads when people smoke cannabis, is they feel this desire to stretch and get inside their body, and that then helps connect us back to the earth, back to the elements within.
You say that, it reminds me of a second ayahuasca journey. Towards the end, I just felt this burning desire to just start doing some stretching. And I was like, I need to stretch. So I just stood up and I just kind of went into like a box split stretch. And I was grabbing my ankles, taking my head to the floor. I was like, oh my God, this feels so good.
Yeah, those ayahuasca mats are not nearly big enough for what I would normally like to do on ayahuasca.
Yeah, you mentioned San Pedro. What's the typical experience of San Pedro? Because I've never sat with that.
I when I went down there this last time to Peru, it was my fourth experience with San Pedro. My times before had been pretty light doses, and in the lighter realms, it's very heart opening. It really activates your creativity and your sensations. And of course, with Hamilton, I did much larger dose, and
Of
and
course.
you still experience it's very heart opening medicine. But San Pedro is also a very connected to sacred world medicine. And so, for us, having been in the Sacred Valley, it's a wonderful medicine to do outside because you feel the wind blow, and it's like we're Pocahontas now, like singing the songs of "Have you ever heard the wind blow to the blue corn moon?" and like, and you feel that you see the birds go by, and you have an understanding of what it is that they're doing. I went and hung out with an alpaca during that time who at first wanted nothing to do with me, so I just stood nearby. And then the alpaca came kind of running up to me and went nose to nose with me. And we just started, they have these big black eyes that are just to die for. And we just start staring in each other's eyes. And then it took its head and started nuzzling around my heart. And it was just
Wow.
incredible. So I find San Pedro to really connect us back with that sacred world in a much gentler way than many of the other medicines. And San Pedro has a very long duration. It's like takes about 2.5 hours to really kick in, and then the whole ceremony tends to last for like 8 to 10 hours, and it's a long one. And for anyone who's done Bufo, I find the visions that I get on it are a little more akin to the visual field in Bufo, but without like sometimes Bufo can come equipped with terror around what one is experiencing, and so there's just like none of that. There's just these beautiful unfolding visuals that are clearly from that connected consciousness space, that DMT like space, but without the entities. And yeah, it's a very just like gentle place to connect through.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty lovely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like you had a really powerful year, and I delight in feeling into when someone is further in the expression of their unique self, which I believe is always expanding, right? We step further in, then we realize, the capacity seems to like eternally expand as to
Mm.
almost like, I don't know, like lifting a weight, for example, what feels heavy at one point then eventually doesn't, and we can always, to an extent, take it beyond. And but with just what you're saying about how you're facilitating, and it feels like there's such a rich kind of ownership of who you are, actually, a rich ownership of who you are, and that it really that's the gift. That's the gift, right? And I truly think that is the target. I think that is the target in each of our lives, is to live the full expression of who we're meant to be. And I really think that was, in the etymology of sin is to miss the mark. And I
Mm.
really think the mark, or the target, is to be the fullness of who we are. And if that isn't what we're aiming for, we're missing the target. And that's, I think that is it.
Amen. To be in that like full authentic expression without apology is where it's really at. And for me, that journey has evolved so much through the evolution of the heart, through the evolution of love, and loving myself, learning to love every aspect of my journey, even the trauma. Even the things that caused me such significant pain that took years to get over, even the things that I judged myself for and I swore I could never forgive myself or another for, eventually finding forgiveness. And in that finding of forgiveness, thank goodness for these beautiful medicinal tools that have become such great allies of mine, that those lessons get integrated. And then I express further and deeper my own authenticity. It's really been a return to innocence in a way, a return to purity for me, to let go of the trauma, to let go of the pain, to let go of the dumb shit I did in my 20s. And I think a lot of people are carrying similar stories. And you really can do the work and let go of these parts of you that are holding power over you and return to your own innocence, your own purity, your own play, and your own love.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It feels like it's a return to wholeness, to that wholeness. And I mentioned this on your podcast actually, and then I didn't actually go into it. And I've been thinking about this a lot a couple of months ago about Genesis and how the Garden of Eden really is a reflection of the state in which we exist, in that paradisal state which exists within. But in that garden is the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And Adam and Eve were told, eat from the tree of life, which I believe represents oneness, to derive your sense of being from oneness. But in there is the tree of knowledge and good and evil, and don't eat from that, because the moment they do, now they are the arbiter of right or wrong. They are the one who is in moral judgment. I know what right and wrong is, and the moment they eat from that gives them the capacity to judge outwards, but they immediately judge themselves, and they feel shame around their nakedness.
Right.
So they now feel shame around their nakedness, and then they hide from God. And God says, where have you gone? So they actually now, in that place of separation, because that's what judgment does, it separates, they now hide from the divine. And they feel shame around their nakedness, and they feel guilt around what they did. And that shame and guilt is the story and of being in that place of judging, and then that's the temptation. That's the temptation of that voice that tries to convince us to eat from that tree of knowledge and good and evil, rather than eating from the tree of life, which it's the one life, it's wholeness, it's being a part of the whole of life itself. And I just think there's such a rich kind of deeper spiritual meaning in that story that I think gets completely missed, where if you just hear it as a story, it actually doesn't really make much sense. Like, what's it even talking about? But then when you think about the human experience, and that garden is within, and just interesting how the Bible also talks about the desert. So we have that paradise or garden within, but also then we can completely enter into the wilderness, and there's that barren land, and it's interesting how that shows up in there. But the allegory for the mapping of our human experience is wild in that. And I just had to invite that into the conversation with what you said, because it really reminded me of that, the things that you can feel shame and guilt, and the things you thought you could never forgive yourself for the things that you did. All that comes from that place of eating from the tree of knowledge and good and evil. I think I know what is good and bad, and I then judge those things, and I judge myself. But it wasn't until I think this is one of the things that plants do. They pull us back into wholeness. They remove the separation, and then I think we break free from that shame and guilt when we return back to that wholeness.
Gosh, that is so incredibly well said. I really, really enjoy you sharing that story and that interpretation of what is written, because you're so absolutely right. And to really understand that text in a new way for me, right? Because we often just get the very plainness of don't eat from the tree. God said this, and now there's all these repercussions. And that was never God's intention.
Yeah.
And I love the getting into the shame of the body. I think that's some of the deeper trauma a lot of people are still carrying. And for me on my journey, going into the forgiveness of the people who traumatized me sexually, going into the forgiveness of myself for being in the situations that traumatized me sexually, for, sometimes there's this unfortunate narrative that people will say, well, you shouldn't have been in that situation. And despite knowing that it wasn't your fault, that's still a narrative that can play out. And really going in and forgiving myself, forgiving the others, to a place where now, like, my sex life is fucking off the charts. It's like I never knew it could be so amazing, that I could find such worthy partners who also have the desire to cherish me, I use the term worship in a way that I think is really magical for both parties to be worshipped. And it becomes something truly special, and something that then causes more empowerment and more play and more pleasure and more love and more integrationness back to that wholeness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever someone says something like, well, you shouldn't have been, that judgment I think they make, it's just a reflection of where they haven't been able to forgive themselves for something they did in the past, and they are holding that blame and judgment towards themselves, and it's just that projection outwards. I think they can't help but do it, and then it's like, and love them too, because they're just projecting a place in which they aren't loving themselves
10 times over. It's like every way that you interact with someone almost has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Well, that went quick, and I wanted to ask you all about planetary dharma, and we didn't touch on that at all. So I feel like it gives us a perfect reason to do another one sometime soon.
I would love to, especially as the planetary dharma program I'm in is launching another cohort in January. So I would love to return and talk a little more about that, or if that's piqued anyone's interest, feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to share my opinions with you.
Let's for sure do that. The John Churchill episode is my most watched on out of all the podcasts I've done so far. So let's set that up, and we can really dive into that.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I would love to.
Barrett, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sabri.